Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. If you're ready to take on your next paying clients, I have good news. My free 4 Basics of Client Attraction and How to Stand Out class is live at haileyrowe.com/client-attraction. In the class, you're going to learn the top 2 traits I recommend for most coaches and entrepreneurs if they really want to turn this into a career. You're going to learn how you can build demand for your services and stop getting crickets on your posts. You're going to learn the sales roadmap I used to improve my sales conversion rate and help my clients do the same. And you're going to learn so much more. So go to haileyrowe.com/client-attraction and get your copy of the class today. For women who want to help their clients with hormonal changes and understand hormones much better. So Jenny, why don't you just share a little bit about your story in the wellness world and how you got into what you do and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. When people ask me this question of how I got into hormone health, I always like to say very unfortunately through my own struggle. I dealt with chronic migraines in my early 20s and infertility in my late 20s, just sort of navigated my own way through a lot of unfortunate struggle. And in that journey, I landed upon functional medicine and functional wellness. I had always been sort of just interested in health and fitness, but at this point in my life, I was really just ready to make some changes overall. Like I was sick of being stuck with migraine pain. I was sick of sort of the depression that was following infertility struggle. And so I got into health and fitness first and was introduced to a functional medicine doctor around the same time. So really started kind of approaching my lifestyle outside of the modern medicine vision of pharmaceuticals. This was probably about 14 years ago. And so I got really interested in fitness and nutrition, eventually opened up my own gym. I started working in network marketing for a home fitness company, really just got excited about helping people through health coaching, virtually health coaching, and also in person. But very quickly, I started to realize that the people that I was meeting with in my gym, I had both male and female clients. So I had men and women both coming into my gym. They were enrolling in what we called 90 days of full body transformation. So they were coming in for 6 days a week of small group personal training classes. I also offered supplements and, guidance on nutrition. And what I found was that the women would come in and they would say, okay, I want to do all the things, right? Like they would purchase the shake, they would do the workouts, they would follow the meal plans, and the men would come in and they would say, I eat what my wife makes, I'll come in for the workouts and that's enough. And at the end of the 90 days, we would see drastic transformation in the men, way more so than we would in the women. So I started to notice pretty quickly that there were physiological differences in both men and women. And it didn't seem to be the case, at least from my experience. The calories in, calories out model just didn't fit women. And started to see that reflected in my clients, but also had experienced that in my own journey. So around that time, 2018, 2019, I was introduced to Dr. Stacy Sims, who was a pioneer in the space of women's fitness and nutrition research specifically. And I started to take her courses. At this point, I had already become a certified personal trainer, obviously, before we opened the gym. I was a nutritionist, but I wanted to really niche down even further into female physiology and how to help women in particular. And when I started to piece together and learn from her more about the menstrual cycle on a detailed level and more about just our hormones as women and how complex they are and how that makes us very complex beings, it started to make everything make sense, not only for the clients I was working with, but also in my own journey. It started to really tie up loose ends where I never really understood where my infertility was coming from or why did I struggle with chronic migraines? All of a sudden, things were starting to make sense, and I started to make that hormonal connection for myself as well. So fast forward to 2019, 2020, I decided that I needed to share this information with women. I had been in this home fitness space now for 10 plus years, and I was watching all these women around me doing all the things, like exercising really hard, doing all the cardio, eating clean, scaling back their portions, all the things, and struggling. They were struggling with the belly fat. They were struggling with mental clarity, sleepless nights, anxiety, sort of these perimenopausal changes, right? And they weren't exactly sure what to do, and they were feeling stuck. And when you're working as a health coach and you are stuck in your own health and wellness journey, right? And you're like, I think this is hormonal, but modern medicine isn't helping me in any way. It's hard to authentically show up and turn around and try to help other people. And so I started to see that happening. I started to see that happening within just this world of health coaches that I was part of. And so I decided to put together a course called the Sync digital course, where I taught cycle syncing fitness and nutrition, menstrual cycle education, really just helping women understand the different transitions that we go through in our life as it pertains to hormones, and how they can really leverage that to their advantage and train and fuel like a female, as opposed to following the regimens that society has followed for decades that are really created for men. So Dr. Stacey Sims, one of the things that she talks about is that women are not small men, and that for decades, research has been done on men in the fitness and nutrition space. It hasn't been until recently that we have research on women. And we now know that intermittent fasting and ketogenic diets and low carb are not good for the training female. And so it starts to make sense when you see all these women doing things that they think are conducive to proper health, but really they're not. It's not conducive for metabolic health and hormone health. So put together the course, and it was actually a couple months before COVID. So I think COVID happened and all these women were like, I need to figure out my hormone health. And so they dove into the course. We had massive momentum in the course. And within a few months, we started to get interest in, what can I do next? Like, how can I turn it around and pay this forward? And it was at that point that we decided that we should launch an affiliate program, a certification program, so that women could take the course to get certified in cycle syncing education, and then turn around and be able to, refer other people into the course and into our, network of information. So that's kind of how it's evolved. We have a podcast now, almost 300 episodes in. We have the community of about 150 affiliates / certified coaches. And we've helped over 500 women through the course itself. And we've just continued. We've fueled that more and more. So we just launched telehealth consults. I partnered with an osteopathic physician to offer bio-HRT and telehealth consults that way. And we launched a fitness program with Kelsey Lensman this year, which is really exciting. So we're just sort of taking the next need that needs to be served and just finding a way to make that happen and to serve women. So super excited about where we're headed for sure.
I love it. And that would be really awesome to share in the show notes, the links to those things and the telehealth and all the different things that you mentioned. So tell me if someone's a health coach and they work primarily with women, maybe in their 40s and up, what kind of things do they need to be considering to better help those women with some of the changes they're going through and how they're feeling with being, kind of gaslit sometimes by society, just saying, oh, no, you're just getting older. What should they be considering?
There's so much to be considering. I just saw yesterday where 45% of women are misdiagnosed at that era of life over the age of 40. When they're dealing with perimenopausal symptoms, they're diagnosed with something else. So they're misdiagnosed. Over 50% of women in that age group will be offered antidepressants. And so if you actually look at the data, we know that only about 4% of women are using bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And I'm not going to go into why that's down from the 45% of women using that 40 years ago. It has to do with the Women's Health Initiative study that was so flawed that sort of, I guess, scarred the view of bio-HRT. But we're starting to learn more. And I like to say when women know better, they can do better. And so when you really take this deeper dive into your own body, what I call body literacy, you start to understand your unique menstrual cycle, your unique hormones. When you start to do further testing like Dutch testing, and you actually do things that are accurate and an accurate look at your endocrine system, you can start to assess what needs to be done. So my course is really like, yes, I'm an integrative health practitioner. That's something that I sought out in this last couple of years, but I chose not to step into that sort of practitioner role and remain an educator, because I wanted people to understand that the number one thing that they need to do in this situation is to be a self-advocate, to walk into your doctor's office, to understand your body at a level that elevates the conversation with that doctor so that you're asking the right questions, you're requesting the right testing, you even to some degree understand how to interpret your own testing, you're able to ask questions about supplementation. Like, it's just this different level of conversation. And that's what my course teaches. So it's really just about how do I help empower women to stop believing that the doctor is the authority on their body, and to really realize when they're being gaslit in a doctor's office, which is happening a lot. And how can they instead, number one, find the right doctor, the kind that has the right knowledge for them in this phase of life, but also how to advocate for themselves to get answers. So that's the real root of it, right? That's the real root of it. But also, there's so much happening at this phase of life. A lot of people they've heard of menopause, right? And I have this every single day. A woman says to me, oh, I've been dealing with menopause for 3 years. And I'm like, no, that's not actually true. Menopause is a birthday. So menopause is 12 months to the date from your last period, right? After that, you're post-menopause. There is an entire decade before menopause, known as perimenopause, where a lot of symptoms come up. And, we hear about things like hot flashes. We don't hear as much about things like frozen shoulder, or vertigo, or anxiety, panic attacks, or trouble sleeping, or brain fog. Like, those are things we don't talk about our periods through our fertile years, and we don't talk about perimenopause. It's just a societal thing that I hope is shifting. But when women can sort of step into this, like understanding this body literacy, and they start to understand things better, they open up about it. And then they have the right types of conversations in the doctor's office about it. And then they get to the root cause of what's going on for them, and they can find supplementation and tools that are bio-individual for them, because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach that diet culture wants us to believe, right? And so when we can really dive into that bio-individuality, that's when women can really say, wow, I've found what I'd like to call maximum energy. Like, this is, I'd like to call it like you 2.0, right? Like, perimenopause should be the time where you're stepping into you 2.0. All of a sudden, you don't care as much about what people think, and you're ready to really step into that power. But so many women are suffering because they hit 40, their adrenal glands start to compensate more for sex hormone production, while their ovaries wave this sort of long farewell, like, it's been real here, we're done. And during that transition of life, we are way more prone to stress, right? And our adrenals are working really hard. And so the average woman who hits 40 and she says, I hit 40 and my body changed, I don't know what happened. The average woman that I speak to decides that she better go back to doing what she was doing at 20. So she thinks to herself, I must need to hit it harder, right? So she joins the Orange Theory, and she takes the cardio classes, and she scales back her carbs, and she cuts back her calories. And all that's doing is stressing those adrenals and her body further. And it's causing her body to hold on to the fat. So why we see women suffer from age 40 to 50 is, I hate to say it, it's their own doing, because they haven't been properly educated about what their body really needs. They need proper fuel. They need strength training. They need enough adequate recovery, mobility work, so that we don't suffer from sarcopenia later in life. And there's so much in this world of bio-HRT that really is a separate conversation, but worth mentioning as well.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. So if a woman does go to her doctor and is more empowered, is more educated, asking for certain tests and bioidentical hormones or things like that, what if their doctor says no? What does a lady do? Do they just say, okay, well, or
yeah, I know. I need to create one of those little like Giphies. Is it Jiffy or Giphy on social media? That's just a flag of someone saying wrong doctor, because I find myself, I need just to have that on hand to post. I see it all the time. I hear that the most common things I hear are, well, my labs were normal. And that's always a huge red flag for me, because I like to say, well, normal is not optimal. So when I look at labs, when the doctor that I work with looks at labs, we are looking for optimal ranges. And what a lot of people don't realize is, when you get a basic standard blood work test done, the ranges, if you've ever looked down in the fine print, right, the normal ranges it's a huge range. Like, you could be looking at something that says normal is 0.08 to 800. Well, that's a really big range, right? Like, so what is optimal? And this is something that's not talked about enough, right? I see too many women who are underdiagnosed with thyroid issues. Optimal thyroid for TSH is around 1 to 2. I've seen women that are upwards of 3 to 4 on that hypo scale. And the doctor, because their house isn't on fire, as I like to say, like, their body isn't, they have a heartbeat and they're alive, right? So the doctor's like, oh, we're not quite to the point of medication yet. Well, there's a difference between, oh my gosh, my house is on fire and I need somebody to put it out, as opposed to I'm trending in the direction of a problem, right? And that's the difference between modern medicine and a functional medicine approach. So I like to say, if you've been told your labs are normal, number one, I don't believe it. If you're not feeling right, if your check engine light's flashing, you've got to dig deeper. normal is not optimal. So I would be finding the type of doctor who's looking for optimal ranges and not just normal ranges. The second thing I would say is blood work isn't even accurate. So when we look at sex hormones specifically, it is accurate for thyroid, it's accurate for blood sugar. It's not accurate for cortisol, and it's not accurate for sex hormones. So if we really want to look at a woman's true menstrual cycle, doing something like a dried urine test through the Dutch company, or saliva testing for cortisol, like there's different avenues for testing to get the right glimpse, right? You could take a blood draw of a woman at 8 a.m. and have a totally different result at 10 a.m. because your body, a female body, pulses hormones at different times of the day. So that matters. In addition to that, the time of the month that the test matters. I mean, this used to happen to me. I used to ask my OBGYN if I could check like my sex hormone levels, and she would send me down the hall to the lab. I would put out my arm. They'd take my blood draw. Nobody ever asked me where I was in my menstrual cycle, right? So you have different times of your cycle when progesterone is high. You have different times of your cycle that estrogen is high. So if no one's paying attention to the time in your cycle in that which that lab is taken, it like totally voids the test. So these are all things that matter. This is all stuff that I teach in the class. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where, you know, the doctor isn't always knowledgeable on that, or they don't necessarily think it matters because they haven't been trained in that functional lens. So you knowing that information helps you navigate, is this even the right doctor for me? And a lot of times that's half the battle, if not more, is finding the right practitioner.
Yeah. And you brought up another point about how as women, we're conditioned to think, oh, the answer is I got to drive up my activity. I got to eat less. I got to be more rigid about X, Y, and Z. And I'm curious because that's going to be for a health coach who has a client who wants to change their body and not have bloat and all the things that come with perimenopause. That's going to be hard for them to re-educate or retrain or recondition when we've been told so long that that's what we need to do. So any advice for how do we start to shift this paradigm, and why is that what we should be doing? And, you know, just how do we be patient with that if we are a woman who's maybe been conditioned that way?
Yeah, no, this is a daily struggle for me because I have a community of hundreds of women who I'm constantly teaching how to unlearn diet culture and to really reverse that, you know, that way of thinking. You know, at the end of the day, it really comes down to, well, if what you're doing is working for you, why are you here? Right. And the bottom line is it's not working for you. So if fasting before your workouts isn't working for you, if your energy is crashing through the day, you're not able to sleep, you've got the brain fog, you can't get rid of the belly fat, you're cutting back on the carbs, you're doing the things, and you feel like, gosh, this is frustrating, I'm stuck, then we have to take a look at it and say, maybe this isn't the way, right? And sometimes it's hard because we see everything out there, right? Like our husband starts keto and he drops 10 pounds in a week or 2 weeks, right? Like we see this stuff out there. Our neighbor, something works well for our neighbor, we think it'll work well for us. And in reality, it's just not the case. And what I find in working, because I do work with clients one-on-one as well, like through these consults, I find that most women, 90% or more of women, are under eating, and they're under eating the foods that they need to be eating. So like they're under eating protein, right? We should be consuming 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So I weigh 135 pounds. I shoot for 135 grams of protein per day. That takes intentionality. The average woman that I'm working with in consults, when we sit down and look at a food diary, she's eating between 40 to 60 grams of protein. Well, I don't know a single woman who weighs 40 to 60 pounds. So when you're under eating protein, your body is not getting the essential amino acids that it needs to fulfill you. And so when it's not getting fulfilled, we reach for the Oreos, we reach for the carbs, we reach for the sugar because our body runs on sugar, right? So if we're not fulfilling those amino acids, we start to pick up the other foods. We start to really go in the wrong direction. So I follow Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, her science on muscle and longevity. You know, our country, our world in general is very under-muscled, and it has a lot to do with the lack of protein that we're consuming. So that's just an example, right? And so I find, again, it comes back to what I said earlier, like when women know the why, they will apply. So when a woman says to me, really, like it feels like I'm eating so much, or you're telling me how much protein, when I actually give them the science behind it, and I say, okay, let's listen to Gabrielle Lyon. Let's listen to her research. Let's see what these doctors and pioneers have to say and how it's working for them. They're like, okay, well, you know, if what I'm doing isn't working, let's try it this way. And what I find is women start to eat more of the right foods. They start to train smarter instead of working harder. And they start to see the actual physique changes. They start to feel the energy changes. They start to feel that shift. And that's enough to keep them going in the right direction. So it's really, I work with Kelsey Lintzman, who's my trainer for my fitness program. And for me, it was a matter of, I have to find the right individual to be the trainer of my program who believes this and who walks the walk, right? And she is that. Like, she is a former strength competitor. Food is her priority. And it's been awesome kind of putting her in front of my audience as well. And to say, here's a woman who's eating, 200 grams of protein per day. She's eating to fuel her body. She's training smart. She's not out doing multiple cardio classes per week. Like, let's take a look at the people who are strong, who are healthy, who are metabolically flexible, who have, good endocrine health. Let's see what they're doing. And when you actually look at that, you find that those women are the ones who are really paying attention to the proper fuel, the proper style of training, proper sleep, and supplementation unique to them. And that's what I teach.
I love it. Awesome. And what should be some things that maybe women in general, but also health coaches who are helping their clients navigate this and get supplements and do functional lab tests and things like that? What kind of things should they know about changes and how long they take to, how long it might take to see results, and maybe HRT and how long things like, going the natural route versus not? Anything in particular that they should be aware of just to make it less jarring, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, first of all, everybody that's listening to this, I'm assuming, has different types of credentials and knowledge, right? Some of you might be nutrition, they might have, nutrition licenses or certifications, or you might be a personal trainer. It's kind of just depends on what your niche is. But I will say that, getting this type of knowledge through my course or through others, and just having that information to be able to then equip you to help other people is going to be step one, right? It's not really as simple as like a Google search on how to help somebody with this and then send them a plan, right? So getting them in the right hands of the right practitioner is a good key, but also just knowing that it does take time. It not only takes time to reverse that diet culture thinking that the woman is experiencing, because every time she's picking up her fork or preparing a meal, she might be thinking about portion restriction, or she might be thinking about, gosh, this seems like a lot of carbs. Like, it's literally something that she has to retrain her brain to do. And so it takes time to do that. Number two, from a training perspective, most women should be following, regardless of whether you're cycling, you're postmenopause, doesn't matter. Most women should be following a progressive overload style of training. So trust me, I love my yoga. I love my Pilates. I love bar classes. Like, I do throw those into the mix. They are not my primary thing, right? Like, if we really want to sustain our muscle mass as we age, which is basically working against nature, we have to continue strength training. And so in order to do that properly, we stick with functional movements. They're really quite boring, that we progress over time. We go deeper in our range of motion. We increase our weights. It's that simple, right? And so when women are following that also takes time. We say we want you to follow a progressive overload plan for 3 months, like the same types of workouts structured out for 3 months to try to get stronger in those 3 months. And then also when we look at the menstrual cycle as a whole, so we look at women age 20 to 40s that are in that sort of fertile window, as we like to say, we also want to pay attention to the fact that it takes 100 days for a follicle to develop. So if you're starting something like bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, or you're starting a new supplement regimen, or you're finding, I have a PCOS diagnosis and I'm really going to try to work on blood sugar regulation, or whatever the case is, that's again going to take 90 to 100 days for that one follicle that you're starting out with to even get to the point of development. And so I like to say, whether it's with your training through progressive overload, whether it's through retraining the brain in eating, or whether it's through just bio-HRT, you've got to give it 3 months, and you have to commit to that. Like, I will tell you, we launched our fitness program in May. I would say in my community, about half of them did a month of it and then went on to something else. And it's like, okay, well, your body does not need confused. What your body needs is to get stronger. And we get stronger by doing the same movements and increasing weight. But the women who've stuck with it, the women who've done the 3 months, are feeling stronger. They're seeing non-scale victories, scale victories. They're starting to feel better. That's what really matters. So patience is really the key. And if you think about it, right, like, it took us a while to get here. So like, we've been in this type of mentality of diet culture now for, I'm 40, so 20 plus years. It's not going to take us 2 weeks to leave that. So it's going to take us some time to get out of it. So patience with your clients is key. affirming them through, the science that we know. Again, I feel like when women have that knowledge, you can't unlearn it. I have women who've gone through my cycle syncing program and they're like, now that I understand this, like I can't unlearn it. Like and that's the key, is help them understand.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and even before you hit perimenopause or menopause, I've learned things from all of the things I'm seeing now. I think there's becoming more awareness around menopause and perimenopause, and things you can even do before that to set yourself up for success, like start training, like start, doing the things that you will be doing, also extra important when you're in that stage. So this has been just a really good eye opener, I think, for a lot of health coaches who maybe want to help their clients on a deeper level and get more trained in this. So how can people find you, learn more about your certification, all that good stuff? I was just looking at your website, and I know you also have a hormone quiz that people can take to find out where they're struggling.
Yeah, so I can equip you with all these links, but we have a hormone imbalance quiz. So if anybody's interested in just learning, I teach something called the 4-legged hormone chair. So it's basically just an analogy to the endocrine system so that people can get a better feel for how our endocrine system works as a whole. And so that quiz is really catered toward helping women figure out what leg of their chair might be the weakest. Is it your thyroid? Is it blood sugar? Is it sex hormones? Or is it stress? And so that's a simple quiz that anybody can take. But for those of you health coaches that are watching, if you're interested in taking the course and then becoming certified in the course, we do have an offer. You can find it at sync.jennyswisher.com/cert bundle. So we've bundled the two together for you so that you can take the course and the certification all at once. As soon as you enroll in that package, you become an automatic affiliate for the Sync program. So we have multiple things in our umbrella. We have fertility courses. We have gut microbiome courses. We're getting ready to launch a detox. We have lots of we have a fitness program. We have telehealth consults. All the things that I've mentioned earn you a 15% commission. So you're able to then refer people into this, this place that gives them the ability to become body literate and ask the right questions. And it gives them the right doctor, and it gets them everything we've talked about here today. And then you're able to, earn a kickback on that for referring people into that program. So it expands your knowledge. It also gives you a little bit of a business opportunity as well. So I'll give you that link. I'll give you all the information so you can link it up in the show notes.
Great. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom here. And for anybody watching, this will be on the Health Coach Nation podcast. If you missed the free live event this week, sharing how to go from crickets to clients with a strong freebie funnel, go ahead and comment, link below if you want to catch the replay to that. And I will talk to you soon. Thanks so much, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Hailey. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.